Now let's take a look at using the color sensor on the tracker robot in order to detect a line. So at this point we have looked at how we can use the IR sensor in order to detect objects, and we looked at how we can use the feedback from an IR sensor to drive a decision statement within the program. And we use that to play tones, and we used it to change the direction of the robot and avoid obstacles. But we also have this color sensor that you can see is pointing directly down. And the reason it's pointing directly down is because we're going to use it to look at the color of the surface that the robot is driving on. Now, this EV3 color sensor is actually pretty sophisticated because, it can detect ambient light in a passive way. So it can just look and say, okay, what's the light intensity of the room? But it also has an active light transmitter, and it's more than just light. It's not just that it sends one color of light. It actually sends red, green, and blue. So you'll see once you turn it on, you'll have these 3 LEDs that transmit down to the piece of paper or transmit down to the surface, and it can actually tell whether it's a white surface or a black surface or a red surface. So what we're going to do is let's make a task for ourselves that we can use to kind of illustrate what's happening here. So our task is that we are going to trap our robot, okay? So we're going to make a box out of a black line, and then we'll make the surface of it white. So this would be an example of having a big piece of foam board and then putting electrical tape around the outside, or just taking a bunch of pieces of paper and printing a line on it. And what we want to do is we are going to create a program, and all we're going to do is just keep the thing trapped in the box. So we'll move along in this blue line, and all the while we'll be transmitting down our light sensor, and we'll be looking for reflected light. So we'll be able to detect whether the surface is white or whether it is dark. Okay, and then if we ever reach the dark surface, which means it hit the line, let's just go ahead and back up in a turning motion and then repeat. Okay, so we'll just kind of do like, I don't know, maybe back up about 45 degrees, do a kind of a backup turn, and then we'll continue. And in this way, it'll just kind of stay within this box. And this would be an example of something where, let's say you had a field that you were going to search with your robot and remove obstacles, for example. So the first step would be keeping it within the box. Now, we are just doing this in a very haphazard manner. We're not going to try to systematically search through this. We're just going to see how we can use the light sensor to actually feed back into our locomotion activity. Okay, so we're going to gain some experience with both locomotion and the light sensors. So at this point, I'm going to bring up my Mindstorm software, and I have a project that I've saved, and I just called it Sensors. And the last one was avoiding obstacles, so I actually saved that off. And so we kind of talked about how it becomes important to save these programs because we're going to want to use some of the constructs that we've done before. Okay, so I have my tracker here, and I have the what I've done is I have a piece of paper right here that represents white and black, okay? And what I want to do is, before I get started with actually keeping my tracker in my box over here, which I have created by doing nothing more than just printing a black line on a white piece of paper, and then I taped it on my desk, I want to make sure that I have the color sensor set up correctly. So I'm actually going to put it on, I'm just going to do a little test right here, and I want to make a tone every time it gets to the black part, and then no tone when it's on the white part, and that'll allow me to get everything set up before I actually put it in the box and trap it. Okay, so here we go. So I've got my program here, and let's see where we're at here. So I'm ready to, let's go ahead and start a new one. So I go ahead and start a new program, and let's call this trapped. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I'll go down and grab my loop construct, which is, we want to repeat this forever. And so we're going to go and pop that down. And then what I want to do is I want to put in a switch. And the switch now, instead of being associated with the IR sensor, is going to be associated with the light sensor. So I go ahead and I click on the sensor configuration, and I'm going to go to the color sensor. And I actually have a couple different options here. So I can measure the color, or I can compare the color. So let's go ahead and see what happens if I do measure color. And this one is really neat because it allows you to have different paths through the switch based on what color it is. So notice that if the color up here is black, then what I can do is it will take this path. Okay? If it is not black, I can come down here and I can tell it what to do. So in this situation, I can actually tell it to be white down here. So this is the path that it'll take if I see white. Okay, so I can actually set this up perfectly. So let's go ahead and we're going to loop forever our light sensors on port 2, and I want to play a sound once you see the dark surface of the line. So I'll come down into my action tab here and I'll grab a sound and I'll put it up here. And let's go ahead and configure this to just play a tone. 440 hertz is fine. We'll play it for a second. I'm going to turn the volume way down and then wait for completion. Okay, so I have this thing ready to go here, and so I'll go ahead and run it. And it's sitting there, okay? And one of the first things you'll notice is that it's shining a light down. So if you can see that, it's actually shining 3 colors of light down, and that's how it detects, it shines a light and looks at what's absorbed and what's reflected, and that's how it tells what the color is beneath it. Okay, so I'm sitting here and it's on the white surface and it's not playing a tone, which is good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it along. I'll push it along until it sees the black surface and it sees the tone. So this is great. So this means that I can actually trap this thing and add locomotion. Now, one of the things you will notice, sometimes if it gets too close, it'll false trigger. So if I push this down, it's going to really affect the way that the measurement is. And keep this in mind because you can set up the color sensor. You don't want it like right on the ground, but you want it a little bit up, but not too far up. And then what'll happen is that if you were on a rough course, you might get some false positives on there. So it's just something to keep in mind in the program. So you might have a little bit of jerky behavior if your robot's bouncing around. But anyway, now we're ready to drop it in a box. So what I can do here is I'll go ahead and stop my program, and let's think about what we want to do. If we don't see the black line, I want to move forward. And so I'm going to come into my action and I'm going to grab my move tank and I'm going to put it in here. And what I want to do is I want to turn it on so that it's continually going. All right, I don't want to like go for a second then look, go for a second then look, because if I go for a second I might run right over the line before I even know I'm there. And let's go ahead and make this slow again. So we'll make it 25. And so this is just continually moving forward very slow when it sees white. So that represents the center of my box. All right, so now I'm going to come up here and say, what am I going to do when I see the line? Well, let's go ahead and leave the black tone in there. I mean, the tone that indicates that it's black. But if you think about what I need to do, I'm going to gently back up and turn and then continue moving through this path. So what I can do is I can come in here and let's grab a move tank again. And I'm going to put it after the tone. And what I want to do is I'm going to do this pretty slowly. So let's do this. Let's think about what we want to do. We wanted to back up and go to the left. So we kind of want to back up and go to the left. So let's go ahead and back up our left motor 25 power and our right motor at 50. So that means that it'll kind of slowly go back into the left. And I want to do this for some number of seconds. I don't know how long to go, honestly. Let's go for 2 seconds and then just see what it is. And then to kind of make it smooth, let's go ahead and coast. So at this point, we have a program and we can go ahead and download it. So let me go ahead and download this. And now I have motion, so I don't want to play it. I want to actually explicitly run it. So now I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to go over to my field here, and what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and browse to my program. Oh, that was not it. So I'll go ahead and go over to my sensors and I have my trapped program, and let's see what happens. So there it goes. No tone. Okay, so it saw something there. It's seeing something. And I believe what it's seeing is it's seeing the regions of the paper that I taped together. And then, so it saw that one, it saw the line. Let's see if it does it again. It's seeing it. It is trapped. So it is seeing it. It's a little slow to react though. But it is working. It is trapped. But what's interesting is that it got a few false positives over here when it went over some of the Scotch tape that I had. But it is trapped. And it's hard to hear, but you can't. It is playing the tone. So let me have it close to my microphone. It is playing the tone here. Now here's what's interesting about this. The reason that it is going past the line is when it sees the line, it's playing the tone immediately. But the tone is set to play for a second before you react. So that's why it's going past. So I don't really like that. So what I want to do, since it's kind of working, let's go ahead and modify this a little bit. So let's go ahead. I want to have the tone. You know, we could do one of two things. We could actually have the tone play for a tiny bit of time, or we could have it play once or just continually go. So I'm going to go with continually, and let's just see what happens there. And this one is, let's make that really small also. So it'll play a tone, and it was pretty quiet there, so let's make it 20 so we really know what's happening. Okay, so I've got this. I'm good to go. I'm ready to go. So let's test this one as kind of our final hurrah here. So I'm going to plug this in and then download. So I'm going to come over here and I download now, and we're ready to go. Okay, so I got to browse over to my sensors trap program. And let's just see how this works now. Okay, so it started off right away. So that unlimited tone did not work at all. It's just playing it. As soon as it fired, it immediately played. However, look at how good it is at reacting to the line. So what I want to do here is I want to do one last thing just to leave it where it's working perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and instead of having it repeat indefinitely, I want it to wait for completion. I just want to play it once. I don't want to wait for it to complete. I just want to play it once. And let's make it a really short tone. Okay, so let's go do that. And so let's go ahead and download this. And we'll do this will be our last one. Okay, so let's hit download. Okay, so let's see how this behaves now. Sensors trapped. So it saw something over here. It saw a transition between a paper. It saw the line there, so that was good. That worked good. Let's see how the tone's doing. Okay, so here's what we've learned on here. So we have it trapped in here, but I have these pieces of paper that are raised up, and it's seeing the shadow in between these. So what I would do to kind of make this a little bit better is I could use a foam board that was very solid and didn't have any transitions in it, or I could actually, since it's a color sensor, I could probably put the tape right on my desk and actually have it detect whether it's brown versus the black tape or a blue tape on there. But anyway, we've done it. We have created a program that is trapping our tracker in a box. Okay, now there were some false positives, but it's kind of good to see that because that's what's going to happen once you have once you start trying to accomplish a real task here. Okay, so let's take a look at where we are now. So we are ready, we have our fourth small checkbox or check mark next to the sensors. That means we are through with the sensors. If you look back at what we've done, we looked at how we used the push button switch to actually trigger a decision. We looked at how we could use the ultrasonic sensor or the IR sensor or ultrasonic sensor to detect an object. We looked at how we could use that to direct locomotion. And then finally, we looked at how we can configure the light sensor in order to direct locomotion. So we have everything that we need in order to do what we call autonomy, which is where you program the robot to complete a task with minimal human interaction. And that's what we'll be doing next.